I think we've got everybody in the room. Thanks again, everybody, for attending. Our safety connection today is on Workplace Violence Risk Assessment Tool, which is a new tool that WSPS has developed and executed and is now available for all Ontario workplaces to use in order to conduct their Workplace Violence Risk Assessment tool. So we are super excited to have you here and to be able to introduce this new tool to us. To you guys. My name is Nicole Sherman. I'm a health and safety consultant here with WSPS. I'm joined by my colleagues Megan Maris, also health and safety consultant, and Christy Cork, specialist consultant in healthy workplaces. The three of us were a small but mighty team, also joined by our IT specialist Priyanka Yadav, who also helped create this wonderful tool that we're going to get to showcase to you today. So before we get going, there's a little bit of housekeeping as far as how Teams works and, just being in this environment together today for the next little bit. Jessica, who is on our team here in the Teams chat, already sent out the MLI-TSD Demographics Collection Survey. It is a completely optional survey for any of you. If you wish to take that, you can. It is sitting in your chat, so I won't stay here too long for the time being, but it is just to collect some demographic information on behalf of the Ministry of Labor, Immigration Training and Skills Development. Responses are completely anonymous and no personal information is collected. And as I said, participation to conduct that or complete that survey is certainly completely optional. That function number that you see there on the screen, 232869, is the number that if you are taking the survey to input, that's one of the questions you have to indicate what's the function number of the session that you had attended for that survey. So I will leave that in your hands. If you wish to take it, we'd appreciate it. If not, that's quite okay too. All right, so computer audio is recommended. Phone conference is certainly available, and your microphone will remain muted at this time. But anything that you would like to input or questions that you may have, we certainly have the chat, and we'll get to that in a moment. And your camera will also remain off for the session today. Megan, Christy, and I love engaging types of sessions. So it'd be great, just because we've got reactions that you guys can do. So we know that where it says at the top, it has react with the smiley face, and you can give a thumbs up or a heart or round of applause. Awesome. I love it. Yes, very good. So if there's anything that you like about the presentation, or so we know you're out there still, feel free to react to anything that you see in the session. We do have a couple of polls as well to help out with our engagement, some questions that we have for you to kind of get an understanding of where you're at with workplace violence risk assessments. And then, of course, we have the chat. So that little speech bubble that says chat underneath at the top, please feel free at any time. We are monitoring the chat. How we're going to do this is if you do have a question that's very pertinent to or relevant to the content that's being delivered at the time, we will keep it a pretty casual and carefree environment, and just we will address that question fairly promptly. If it's a question that's maybe more general, then it's something that can maybe wait till the end. We'll kind of triage that, and we'll address your question at the end. But certainly, any questions you have, comments you have, please put those in the chat, and we will do our best to get to those in a timely manner. There are some different accessibility features as well. So as far as turning on live caption, you can do that. So if you go to the top of your screen and it says, you see the three dots, it says more underneath. You can go to your settings and you can turn on, language and speech, and turn on your live captions. If you'd also like to see this in full screen, you go to that one that looks like 4 quadrants and you go to view, hit more options, click full screen, and then that will enlarge your view of the screen as well. So some different things that will help you out in those cases there. Okay. If you've never been to a Safety Connection before, welcome. If you've been to them, welcome back. There's certainly the goal of our Safety Connections are to learn, share, discover what you value. What is it that WSPS has their pulse, their thumb on, that they're so eager to share and kind of get you guys up to snuff on, and knowing what there is kind of going on with health and safety. What's the pulse out there, what's going on. It's a way to virtually connect with all of our peers as well, a way to network kind of back and forth, what's working at your workplace, what's not working at your workplace, and we share those ideas. We also like to facilitate those best practices, okay, hence the sharing. We certainly know we have to meet that minimum legal requirement for lots of things, but what are we doing to kind of push the needle? How are we pushing to best practice? So we share that here as well. And it's really nice that you get to attend from your own personal workspace as well. Hence, it takes out a lot of that travel and the extra time required with that. So it makes it nice and convenient for all of us. Okay, good. So what are we going to tackle today? So the first section is all going to be about workplace violence risk assessment and just the requirements for those in Ontario, just to make sure we're all kind of starting off on the same playing field there. Then we get to do the most exciting part, which is, drum roll, we're going to introduce our new WSPS Workplace Violence Risk Assessment tool. You may hear me say WVRA tool for short, because it could get a little bit lengthy, me continuing to say Workplace Violence Risk Assessment. So we'll say WVRA tool, and then we'll get to some resources and some questions today. Okay, a lot of today is going to be about a demo, doing a lot of demonstration, showing you the website, showing you our resources, and actually giving you an opportunity to create your own account, get a little hands-on with the tool as well. So that part's really nice. Okay, so our goal for you and all who are attending is to build your confidence to meet the compliance. So at the end of the day, if you've never completed a workplace violence risk assessment at this time, or you're feeling a little uneasy, what do I do? I have all these questions. What is a risk assessment? We're here to help you out with that piece today. I want you all to feel confident and to know that you and your team already have the information. You have the knowledge. You know the work. You know the workplace. That is half the battle, right? You're in your workplace regularly, so you know it like the back of your hand. You have first knowledge of the work being conducted, and you're aware of whether or not you've even had past issues with violence in your workplace. And you have a team who's likely willing to provide you input around these workplace violence hazards. You probably have a health and safety rep or a joint health and safety committee who have lots of information that they'd like to be consulted on and share with you about this particular hazard. So lean on your knowledge, lean on your experience, lean on those on your team. If you've got that information, truly just doing the risk assessment itself, using our tool, will help you cross the finish line. So you are ready to certainly start the race, but today will pull you across the finish line. Okay, this tool is definitely being geared towards small business, less guesswork, more clarity, a much more simplified, guided approach to doing a workplace violence risk assessment. Okay. So we're going to do a poll question here for you. I just wanted to know, are you aware that Ontario workplaces are legally required to conduct a workplace violence risk assessment? Were you aware that the Occupational Health and Safety Act, this lovely green book, okay, were you aware that it said your workplace has to do a workplace violence risk assessment? Let's take a look here. So you can answer, okay, good. Okay. Well, I'm glad that a good portion of you know that one needs to be done. Some of you maybe weren't aware. And to be honest, you're not alone. You're not alone. We work with so many companies, and we may go into a company and just kind of start a conversation about health and safety, and we somehow stumble across, have you done a workplace violence risk assessment? Oh, no, I didn't even know we had to do one. I don't know what it's all about. Okay, so I'm glad that you're on the call with us today for sure. So I'm just going to go through a couple of slides on what are the requirements, what does the Occupational Health and Safety Act say about needing to do a workplace violence risk assessment. So in the case of what it asks for, the employer shall assess the risk of workplace violence that may arise from the nature of the workplace, the type of work, and the conditions of work. So when you think of the nature of the workplace, we think of the kind of physical aspects of the workplace. What is the lighting? Okay. How do patrons, customers kind of flow through the building? What is the security of the building? What is the depth of our reception or service counters? So what is our parking conditions like? So it's that kind of nature of the workplace, kind of the physical environment. Then we look at the type of work. So that type of work really focuses more so on the tasks that we're doing. What is the work that we have to perform? What sector are we in? Okay, those types of things are kind of that type of work. Certainly, certain tasks, certain sectors are probably more at risk given the work that they do. The clientele that they may interact with definitely falls under that type of work as well. So when you think of police, right, the type of work that they do, the type of clientele that they may have to interact with. I used to work in healthcare. Violence is definitely one of the top, if not the top, incident that happens within that sector. Healthcare is high risk for violence. We've noticed the same in education. You think social work. So it's not to say that violence doesn't happen other places, but how do we engage with our clientele? What work are we doing with those clientele? And so that kind of falls under that type of work. And then there's the conditions of work. So that kind of falls in and around, what are our hours? Do we work early mornings, late evenings, weekends? Is there shift work? Right? So there's different, do we work alone or in isolation? Those types of things are conditions of work. Okay. So we have built a tool that does address all three of those requirements when you do a workplace violence risk assessment. Okay. The employer then also needs to advise the health and safety rep or the joint health and safety committee, if you have one of those, either of those, the results of the assessment and provide that copy if it is in writing. If your workplace does not have a health and safety rep or a JHSC, then because you're small and you're too small, you don't require either, then the employer must advise the workers at that workplace of the results of the assessment. So there's no legal requirement for the JHSC or the HSR to be involved in the initial assessment. However, it's best practice. If you were to come to us and ask us, hey, should we have our committee or health and safety rep involved in the workplace violence risk assessment? We would say absolutely. But the bare minimum legal requirement for sure is to make sure that the results of that assessment is shared with the committee. I would also suggest informing your union as well. Yeah, I think that's a good best practice for sure. Again, not a legal requirement, but I think as far as the workplace and those workers who are there, yeah, I think that, those union workers for sure would need to be advised as well. Christy.
Yeah, and just on that note, typically there's union representation on the Joint Health and Safety Committee, so that's also a good way to make sure that they're up to speed on the contents and what came up in that risk assessment. Yeah, it's best practice to have union representation on the committee, I guess, is what I'm trying to say if you don't already.
Yeah, awesome, perfect. Thanks for that. Okay. The other requirement when it comes to assessments, the employer must reassess as often as necessary to ensure the workplace violence policy and program continue to protect workers from workplace violence. So nowhere in our legislation does it give us a nice black and white defined time frame. Thou shalt reassess, say, in 3 years, right? It does not give us that. And I think some of us in health and safety really like that prescription sometimes, but it's not there. So what would constitute or trigger needing to do a reassessment? So maybe it's a violent incident has occurred in the workplace, and we go, well, maybe we don't have all of the proper controls in place. We need to kind of reassess this situation and change kind of our control measures and our protocols going forward. Maybe we acquire a new location or site. Maybe we're growing. Okay. Maybe we're growing also to the point where we're putting on a new addition to the workplace. We're doing some reconstruction. Maybe we reconstruct the workplace in such a way that traffic flow, customer flow through the workplace has changed, right? Maybe we need to reassess because of that. Maybe we've had a major increase in staffing levels or a major decrease in staffing levels. Okay, maybe we have gone to working at a brick and mortar location, and now we're kind of maybe we have some people working remotely, so now there's less people in that main brick and mortar location. Okay, or a department takes on a new area of the workplace where different work is being performed. So to kind of explain this actually happened to myself when I was working at the hospital, large facility. One department was moving to a new wing of the hospital. So I think our stroke unit was moving to a new wing, I think where the medicine unit used to be. Still healthcare and taking care of patients and things like that happening in that space, but different. So the Ministry of Labor happened to be there one day when we were in that transition kind of construction phase of transitioning. And they said, have you done a workplace violence risk assessment of this department in this area? And I said, well, yeah, we did. We did the whole hospital. But they're like, well, have you done one since you're looking at transitioning? And I said, well, no. And I said, well, the work you're doing here will be different now. The client flow is different, everything else. You need to reassess. So that was a bit of a learning point for me there as well. Maybe your hours change in the workplace as well, or we've added or removed shifts. So lots of things can trigger a reassessment. Just think about how the workplace is designed, how we do work in that space, and those kinds of things will maybe be a trigger to you there. Yes. So does the assessment also include outside the workplace? So an employee goes out for a break near the office area and experienced a violent act where someone pushed the employee. Yes. So whatever the company grounds are part of that. So if you have a parking lot, whatever grounds are tied to that is part of that risk assessment. I'll get into other things too about the risk assessment as well. Like if the company is providing parking that's a block away from the main location, say maybe in a downtown core or something, and we've got to walk a block to get to our parking garage, there is that element of, how do our workers get to the parking garage safely and not? There's things that the employer can control and there's things that they can't, right? What do we own? What buildings, what structures, what land does the employer own that they can make those changes? And where you can't, what other types of controls are we looking to put in place? So we'll look at that a little bit later. Okay. There is a poll question that has now come up for you. So yes, now we know it's a legal requirement to do a workplace violence risk assessment, but have you completed one? So of those on the call, if you could answer yes or no. So has your workplace completed a workplace violence risk assessment? Okay, so about half. Good to know. So this is great. So now we are able to help you guys. For those of you who haven't done one, we're actually going to show you the tool and you'll be able to log in, create your own account, kind of just play with it a little bit. For those of you who have, good. I want to kind of also know from you guys maybe at the end, compared to what tools you've used previously, is the tool that we're providing something that you'd think to use in future for a reassessment? Or maybe you are up for a reassessment and that this tool could certainly help you. So this is good. This is good. Thank you, everyone. For those of you who have or haven't, this is out there to anybody. What barriers or challenges have you encountered when even just trying to complete a workplace violence risk assessment? So if you could go to the chat and just indicate there, what are some of your barriers? What has either prevented you from doing a workplace violence risk assessment, or if you have done one, did you hit any hurdles, hiccups, blocks, anything like that? I'd love to hear from you that way. Just to Nicole's point there, not sure if we have. That's a great question. So if you're not sure, that's a great question to go back to the employer and ask, hey, have we done a workplace violence risk assessment? Is this something that, you know, we need to, if we do need to do this, this is a good time to open up that conversation and say, hey, did you know, I was just on this safety connection today with WSPS and learned that we need to do this. So yes, glad that that's a very okay question to have. Don't know if we have or haven't. So if we have, then where do we find it? You should be able to get the results of that assessment. So some barriers and challenges that we have noticed, or had others kind of let us know with some other types of tools, is that maybe there's a lot of text that we have to type in. It's not very click-based. It may be paper hard copy, need to write out a lot of our risk assessment. Maybe not really full circle in like being able to go log back in and do a reassessment. It's kind of a one-time shop only. It doesn't kind of carry with the company for years going forward. We are a tenant in a building, not sure the dynamic in conducting one. Very good. Okay, we'll talk about that. We have done workplace violence risk assessments for employers and companies who rent the space. Okay, and then that's very normal to have many companies rent the office space or rent their clinic space or whatever that is, the building that they're in. An employer still must do a workplace violence risk assessment, right? Those are your four walls that you are working in and your staff are working in. So we need to make sure that that place is safe. When it comes to things that are control measures that may fall more to the landlord to fix, have that engagement, have that conversation. But again, where you don't have influence on what can be done maybe by an outside party, then we got to start getting creative and thinking about what do we do in these instances then to make sure we keep our staff safe. Assumption of a low risk environment, no documentation. Yes, right? So this is the nice piece about this tool is you'll get 2 reports, and I'll show you those going forward as well. Yeah, capturing all potential risks. That's really, if we kind of just start with a piece of paper and go, gosh, what are all the things? Where is all the what are all the things that could cause us harm as far as violence goes? And our tool hopefully will do a good way of kind of like triggering some ideas in and around that. And Nicole says, we are in a high risk area downtown, but not sure how far we are responsible for. So really just again, your building, your space. And even if, you are a certain floor, a certain level, where your staff work is obviously that main area makes proper sense. But, entry into the building, if I'm using stairwells and elevators, how do we do that safely? I'll talk a little bit about that. And again, when we talk about that, we'll talk about parking in a bit, but when we go to I talk about parking lots earlier, it's, do we have a means of summoning assistance? No, we can't be responsible for changing all the burnt out light bulbs. But there's things that we can do to make sure that we've got maybe a buddy system and other things that we can do to put in place, more administrative types of controls when it comes to that. But all good questions. A violent act in the food court. Yeah. You don't have control over that, right? It's like us saying, I'm going to go to the restaurant on my lunch, and there's no control over what happens kind of in those spaces, right? So it kind of goes back to that idea of Yeah, again, what do we have control over and what do we not? What I do on my lunch hour, again, too, is what I do on my lunch hour. It's maybe not necessarily for work purposes too. Multiple locations with different risk in locations. Yes, high risk, downtown, brewery, and industrial building, traveling. So the other part to consider here, and I'll talk about this as well, if you have specific departments, specific types of jobs that do different work, and some may be more hazardous than others, you may choose to do a concentrated focus risk assessment just on that particular job or just on that particular department because it is more high risk in the work that they do. Okay. Others who are more general might be able to do just the whole workplace in one shot. Okay. Determining who should participate in the workplace violence risk assessment and the review. Yeah. So again, you've got your JHSC or your health and safety rep for sure. You certainly, if you've got health and safety in the workplace, I got a coordinator or manager or someone there. HR maybe is fulfilling that role for some now. Supervisors of the areas that are being assessed, certainly maybe involving them, right? Talking to workers for sure becomes part of that assessment. Maybe not part of that core team, but when you're talking about doing that workplace violence risk assessment as a whole, then it's who do we talk to, right? So definitely that. To Nicole's point, landlord has security and various offices have their own security detail, but we have no control with that. That is right too, right? There might be security for the building, but not necessarily for your specific staff piece. Okay, good. Love all the comments. So you can see the uniqueness and the variability that happens across different workplaces. So hoping the tool will help kind of frame that for you in going through your risk assessment. So here we go. We get to kind of showcase the benefits and the features of our tool here. So we were very cognizant of trying to make this tool easy to use, user friendly. Our main goal and focus for this was initially with a small business lens. That is one of the areas that we were noticing. That particular area was finding it challenging to do these workplace violence risk assessments. So we are trying our best to keep this as simple as possible, right? So more simple, less overwhelming than maybe some other types of tools we use. The next great thing is that it's free. So it is on our WSPS website. You guys can do this on your own, or you can choose to have a consultant do it for you. I'll talk a little bit about that as well, okay? It does meet the legislative requirements for completing a workplace violence risk assessment. So if you can wholly complete that risk assessment and you click submit and you pull those reports, you're gonna have checked the box to say, we did this, we got our workplace violence risk assessment done. It doesn't mean that you haven't now maybe followed up on some of the gaps, some of the things that you identify that are higher risk or medium risk, and you need to put some attention and some controls to. That's the follow-up piece, okay? But certainly having just done the risk assessment, this tool will do that for you. And you will have 2 reports that are auto-generated for you with your responses, okay? And I will show you a copy of those, okay? It supports also ongoing compliance with the ability to conduct reassessments. So you can go back into this tool after you've done an assessment, okay? And maybe 6 months to a year later, you need to go do a reassessment. Log back in using your same credentials and go in, and you can, if it's just a piece that you need to reassess, you can reassess a piece, and that's fine, and regenerate new updated reports. If you'd rather just do a new one altogether, start from fresh, do it from scratch, you can do that too. Okay, so I'll show you how that will look. All right. Now, again, some different features of this tool. We've provided for you suggested controls, okay? And I will show you those. Aside from policy and program, and maybe Yeah, aside from policy and program, there really are no legislated requirements when it comes to controls. It's up to the company to decide how we are going to effectively minimize the risk for violence in our workplace. And how you do that is up to the company to decide. A lot of it is click-based features, so we'll go into that. There is a little bit of free text to add your own flair to it, but otherwise we're trying to keep it simplified in that sense. Ability to assess multiple sites, which I talked about. And at this time, which is very important to remember this, it is only accessible from a computer or tablet at this time. It is not smartphone friendly. Okay, so to try and use this tool on a smartphone is not going to work the best for you. So be on a computer or a tablet, please, when you are completing this assessment. And we also have free resources as well. It isn't just here's your risk assessment. Well, now we've done the risk assessment, like what kind of controls do we put in place? What are some suggestions? And we've got some resources, and I'll show you that here as well. Okay, good. I don't see any other questions, I don't think, in the chat that we haven't already addressed already. But this here is your this image here is hyperlinked. So if you have one screen and you would just like to continue to watch the show and eat your popcorn, that's great. I will give you a total demo on exactly how things are going to flow here. I'll show you the website. I'll show you how to do it. But you can also click on this. It will take you to the website. And if you want to start kind of opening and creating your own login, you can do that too. But I just asked to probably hold off on that until I get you through a little bit of a demo of the website here. Okay, so I am going to transition from the main screen here, and I'm going to share my second screen. So I'm not, I'm going to just pull this over here, and then that way it doesn't look like I'm ignoring you guys. Oops, nope, we're going to do this. We're going to stay there. Okay, perfect. So this is our WSPS.ca website. Okay, so if you go to WSPS.ca and you click on How We Help, under the How We Help menu is the Small Business Center. It starts here again because, again, our focus here was very much on small business. So we do have it on the Small Business Center site. So we're going to click on Small Business Center. And as you scroll down, you'll see a few menus here. And one says, What's New? And at the top of that What's New menu, you'll see Workplace Violence Risk Assessment Tool. And you'll click on that. Okay. Another way that you can get here, and I do too myself, is if in your search bar for your internet, you just put in WSPS WVRA, it will pull one of those top 2 or 3 options that comes up, will take you directly to this page as well. Okay, so we're on the website. This is our landing page, our home for our Workplace Violence Risk Assessment tool. So as you scroll through, we are going to give you a little bit of background on a Workplace Violence Risk Assessment. We do take you to the Occupational Health and Safety Act, where it talks about those requirements as well. As we continue to scroll down, we give you just a bit of information. Here's an option to actually click and start using the tool itself. So there's one option and possibility for that. But again, it's going to kind of remind us that this is a guided, comprehensive workplace violence risk assessment. It is a digital tool, kind of some of the benefits from that. The flexibility in how the assessment is completed. Again, this is free. You guys can use this on your own. It can be self-directed. Do what you like with that. Or you can contact WSPS and you can get a consultant to take you through and do this risk assessment for you. That will come with a fee to have a consultant-led risk assessment. But maybe for the first one, that's what you guys would like to do, to have a bit of experience and knowledge and kind of guiding you, and also doing it for you, you know, doing the walkthrough, seeing your workplace, maybe bringing up some other unique tailored suggested controls that maybe aren't in the list. So you've got that option as well. Okay. You get the clear actionable reports. The WVA report itself is just the summary or responses that you put in initially, and then you get your action plan. Okay, what future controls do we need to implement? And then looking at support beyond compliance. Again, it doesn't just stop with this risk assessment. You have consultants who are very knowledgeable and experienced in this type of work, who can help you along, point you in directions, guide you in certain senses. And that doesn't always come with a fee either. Certainly, we can kind of give you some information and some guidance and have a meeting with us, and we can certainly give you some tips and suggestions on that as well. After today, if you don't remember all the things that Nicole talked to you about when it comes to the workplace violence risk assessment, we have created a great little tutorial here. Our friend here that you can see on the screen, her name's Barbara, Megan Christie, and I named her. But anyway, Barbara will walk you through all of the WVRA tips and tricks when it comes to that. I won't play that for you today because I'm pretty much Barbara today for you guys. But definitely, if you need that recap of, I forget this, or what is that? What do I do here? That'll take you through a 5-minute quick tutorial on all the things that you really truly need to know. And then there's an easy kind of like some tabs that you can pull up here as well. Just some images of some kind of key things within the tool itself. Okay. And then we hit the good stuff here. So you can see here the purple clipboard talks about taking the assessment now. The green light bulb is access to free resources. And this blue book here that you see is the glossary of terms. So I will show you each of these. We thought it was very important to create a glossary because health and safety loves acronyms. And so we don't always know exactly what those acronyms mean. Those are all there for you. There may be certain terms that we've used in the risk assessment itself, and we're not always up to snuff on knowing what all those mean. So we do have those terms here for you. So controlled access door, if you click on that, it takes you right to that definition. Okay, and a lot of those definitions all fall forward there. Okay, so that's our glossary. Then we have access to free resources. So this is that after piece, right? So if you've gotten through your risk assessment and now we need to put in future controls, we realize there's some gaps, we've given you some things to look at, some things to review. So what are our WSPS resources? And one of those is a workplace violence policy and program template. This is something that workplaces typically are missing as well. Or maybe they're like, is this a comprehensive policy and program? Is this enough? Compare it. Compare what you have to what we're suggesting is good to have. It's definitely filled with the legal requirements that must be there, and then some best practices on top of that. So that one we felt really good about making sure we share, because that's usually a bit of a gap that we find as well. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety, or CCOHS, they have some great resources, as well as workplace strategies for mental health. There's lots of resources there, and some additional resources that we were able to find as well. Okay, so there's a lot of starting points, a lot of information there for you to get you going on the control side of things. So now, without further delay, we are going to actually get into taking the assessment. Okay, what I am going to do, I'll have you guys do, but I'm going to log into my account that I already created. But if you are creating your account for the first time, I'll have you check that one box that says check this box to create a new user. If you are creating, certainly create one for yourself. If you just want to kind of create, play, do your thing, that's totally fine. Just remember that this tool stays with the company, can stay with the company. So some companies have been using a more generic email, like, I don't know, hr@whatever.com or whatever, right? Or health and safety at whatever.com, like whatever generic email you guys want to use as your login. And then picking a password that if you do leaving that email and password to be passed on to the next individual, because again, if we're going to reassess, let's keep this account active with this company. So just bear that in mind. And thank you, Megan, for putting that into the chat. That's much appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to log in here. If you can, again, you're going to learn real quick that I can't type and talk at the same time. All right, this should bring me to my login. Spinning, there we go. Okay, so these are ones that I have created in past. So this is kind of a good idea. What you can see here is if you do multiple locations, your library here will just continue to grow. Okay, so it showed you that I've completed 2. I've also started another that I've not submitted for. So I have an in progress, which is great, right? You can start this assessment. If you can't complete it all in one day, no problem. Okay, come back, log in, and go back and view and edit that assessment. Okay, so lots of great features when it comes to that. If you want to add a new assessment, simply go to the tab there, pick your address, okay? Okay, and okay, province. We are in Canada and postal code. Just going to make one up. Okay, so and add new location. So now you'll see that one does pop up and you can see that I haven't started. Okay, so I'm going to start this assessment and we'll start this walkthrough. So you will get a nice introduction, again, about workplace violence risk assessments, the tool itself, just some good intro information. One other really great feature of this tool is the fact that we have this nice menu here on the left. It allows you to jump from maybe one section to another. Maybe you start getting into one section and go, oh, I don't have all the information here. I need to go look at this. I need to talk to this person. I need to look at this document. I need more information. Come back to it. Okay, so you can jump freely through the tool, which is nice. But when you get to the end and you think you've completed everything, we are making sure that you go back, check you've got everything answered before clicking submit. Okay, so we will click save and next, and that will take us to our next page. So what is the name of your company? We'll put that in there. And it's automatically for our location going to pull the address from the initial creation of this particular risk assessment. So that's a nice feature. The name of the person who is conducting the assessment. Okay, what's my role? Oops. Okay, names of other team members completing the assessment. So maybe Megan is on the JHSC. Christy is also part of our health and safety team, so she's going to be joining as well. So you could also put their role and things like that there as well. How many workers are at your workplace? Okay, so maybe we've got a smaller workplace, maybe we have 25 employees at our workplace, and what sector are we in? Okay, maybe let's say we're in, doesn't matter, public administration, sure. Okay, so that's the information that's being gathered on this page for here. And a lot of this then is going to pull to your actual reports at the end. So I click save and next. Okay, and this is the prompt now that we're getting into the risk assessment itself. One other thing I just want to highlight is that you see the back and the save and next buttons here. These are the buttons you need to use in order to move forward and backward or the menu through the tool. Do not use the back button in your browser because it will create an error. So once you're in the tool, use the features that are in the tool itself. Okay. The first section here, and I won't go through in major detail. It would take quite a bit of take a bit of time to kind of get through. What we are noticing, if you're kind of wondering about timing to complete, if you are a smaller organization with not a lot of complex violence hazards, maybe an hour and a half is the right kind of time length for you. It's very hard for us to judge and say what it would be, but I would definitely give yourselves, especially if you're just kind of getting a crack at it and understanding it, a good hour and a half, to just kind of even get in, started, comfortable, and get going with the tool for sure. You'd get a good start on it for sure. But for those who maybe have more complex, meaning you've got more high risk hazards for violence in your workplace, this may then take a bit more time. And these risk assessments also aren't just done from your desk, right? You need to have that walk around, you need to do the observation, you need to have the consultation with the people who are working in the space. So conduct this just like you would any other kind of, even monthly inspection. Okay, so you've got to kind of have that observation and talking to the people who do the work aspect to it. So, well, we thought this was also a great opportunity because there are the legal requirements for the policy and the program to add those questions into this risk assessment. We realize that you do not need to do a risk assessment for harassment. That is not a legal requirement. There is no such thing as doing, workplace harassment risk assessments. They're only for violence. However, again, because we wanted to take this opportunity, knowing that their harassment and violence are so closely linked and are, together in that part of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, it's a good opportunity to do a bit of a check and balance for all workplaces to say, do we have these legal requirements in place for both violence and harassment when it just comes to the policy and the program? Okay, so we went above and beyond here when it comes to that piece. So you answer simple questions of, do you have a workplace violence and harassment policy? Is it reviewed at least annually? Is it also posted in an accessible location for all workers? I get that question has 3 parts to it. If you say no to any of those parts, then you have to answer no to the whole question. Okay. Then it goes, do you have a program for violence and harassment in order to implement the policy? Okay. If you say no, then we move forward here. So when it comes to, if I say no to any of these, which are all a legal requirement, it will automatically populate a future action that I need to take in my action plan. So this is where that information is going to go. If I say yes, that I do have some of these components or all of these components, that will go to your report, your summary report, to say how you answered those questions. Okay. So again, I'm not going to go through all of them, but now we're kind of going to get into some workplace violence program questions. So you can answer these as they see fit. If you go, oh, I don't think we have this, but we do, you can change your answers too. So again, there are a few questions here that you need to answer with respect to that. The other nice piece here is having this additional notes and observations. So this is available for you the whole time as you work through each of these questions. Maybe something's come up specifically with request to maybe, does your workplace violence program include a means for summoning immediate assistance? Well, maybe yes for the people who are in our building and in our location. But what if we have people who are traveling for work purposes, doing deliveries or sales or whatever that may be? Do they have a way to summon assistance immediately? Maybe we forgot about that particular job position. So add a note in there, and that will just trigger your mind and your memory later to kind of put the detail in that you maybe need to remember for later on. So again, I'm not going to answer all of them, but that's what this page definitely will go through, all those legal policy and program questions. Now we're getting into physical environment. Okay, so there are a number of questions here associated with physical environment. They also pop up here for you in your menu. So those are the different hazard categories that we have there. The first question is, do you have a reception and or waiting area? If I click yes, I will carry on now, and I get to see that I get this pre-populated list of controls. Okay, so here we need you to select the controls you currently have in place, if you have some of those. If you don't, that's okay. Or any that you plan to implement in future. Maybe we thought of some pretty cool controls and you'd like, yeah, I like that one. That's pretty neat. We want to do that at our workplace. Okay, so then you pick future control. You can also pick not selected. Maybe it's not one that makes sense. It's not reasonable. It's not something that you think is appropriate to implement at your workplace, and that's okay too. Just click not selected, okay? Any control that we suggest here are purely suggestions. These are not legal requirements. The legal requirement comes down to making sure, though, that the employer has reasonably protected its workers from workplace violence. But it's up to the employer as to how that's done. And we're just giving you suggestions on how to do that. Okay, you may come up with your own. You might have better suggestions of controls. So you can see here it says a barrier is or will be placed at the reception area to prevent unauthorized access. And you go, yeah, we already do that. That's a current control. The reception area is or will be equipped with 2 clear exits. Oh, that's a good future control. Okay, maybe let's click that one. Understanding that that maybe needs a little bit of construction, or maybe that's not feasible or reasonable for us at this time, but we'll remember that for coming maybe down the road in future if we do any kind of reorganization or restructuring of our reception area. Okay. Are there clear sight lines? Yes, those are great. Okay, so again, I won't read through all of them, but this is the practice now that you will go through about what do we currently have in place, what do we like that we might want to put in place, or we go, nah, I don't really care for those. Okay. The other option that we have also provided you with, because we're pretty humble in knowing that we're not going to know all the controls, we're not going to know all your unique workplaces and knowing what fits, what works, what doesn't work. Now here's a list for you to add current controls. If we didn't think about it and put it in the list here, you go, well, we do this. Perfect. Put it in the current control list that you're already doing. Get credit for that. Okay, you want to put that in there and you want that recorded. Okay, you want that in your documentation. If you choose to go, you know what? Because of our work environment, our uniqueness, we think, oh, we'd like to add this future control, type that in there. Okay, so you can type all of those in, any other additional future controls. If you go, you know what, we don't, this category, we are able to take care of everything in the suggested list. Okay, no problem. This is not applicable then. Okay, then we here now get into assessing the risk for this category of specifically the reception area. So we look at probability versus severity, and our probability is what's the likelihood that something's going to occur? Very likely, which means it occurs frequently. Likely is expected to occur, but not frequently. Possible means it could occur, but not common. Unlikely means occurs rarely, and very unlikely means it almost never happens. Okay. So for this, maybe we'll say possible. Okay. Then we go into severity. And actually what you'll also see in this risk assessment as well is these eyes in these black circles. If we felt there was a need to provide further context, further explanation, a reminder of a definition, then we've provided you with that context and everything there. So you can hover over that and read what it's all about. So severity is the potential impact or consequences of a hazard if it were to occur. So if it were severe, we would say there could be a fatality, a critical injury, or permanent physical or psychological harm likely to result in significant time away from work. Moderate, we categorize as physical or psychological injury requiring medical attention, which may result in modified duties or a short absence from work. If it's minor, then we'd say minor physical or psychological injury that resolves quickly, no time away from work required, and or negligible, meaning no physical or psychological injury, no treatment or support was needed. So in this case, maybe let's just say, well, there's the potential for moderate injury here. And so what you're going to get then is your risk level is going to be assigned. If I were to change this and say, unlikely and negligible, we're going to get very low. Unlikely and minor gives us low. If I were to say very likely and severe, you're going to get high. So based on how you choose your probability and your severity, this will assign your risk level and you'll get that visual right in the moment. And then you'll type in any additional notes if it's applicable to this particular category with reception. And then I click Save and Next. Okay, so that is how each page from here on out flows. But I will definitely take you through kind of the main hazard categories that we've gone through at this point, but not necessarily the whole kind of clicking of everything, just so that you can kind of get a sense of what our topics are here. So still under physical environment, we're looking at lighting. Okay, so are things adequately lit inside and outside? If we say yes, no issues, we don't get a list of controls. We can just move on. Okay. If I said no, then we're going to go through the risk assessment piece. Okay. Are parking lots provided for worker use? So here, where we say yes. And again, thinking about what are some of those controls? Because this has already come up, right, in our chat and our discussions already this morning. Parking lots aren't always as simple as being the parking lot that's 5 feet from the front door of our workplace and it surrounds, it's at our workplace and location. We understand that. But again, are we looking at, lighting? Is there potential for video surveillance? Again, if you don't control the space and you're not monitoring it, not applicable, right, for you guys. Are there gates, badges, security guards, or other security features? Maybe there's call boxes. Maybe in your parking lots that you guys are using, there may be other emergency or security features already in that parking lot. Let's learn about them. Let's figure out what they are. Okay. Maybe we can do a buddy system. We always walk together to the parking lot. If for those who we just were at a place, actually, Megan and I the other day, they had parking that was at a further location, a block away in a parking garage. They did have people who worked after hours. And we said, well, is there a way that when, we're done our core hour of 9 to 5 to bring your vehicle to out front where there's a closer location to park? And in most cases, they said, you know what? After the businesses kind of wind down, there are usually some spaces that are closer and we could figure out a way to do that. So for those people who are parking, kind of away and are working in those after hours time frames, are we able to get to a closer location for parking? So again, what's your circumstance? What's unique? What availability do we have access to? And just kind of getting creative that way and going, how else can we do this? Okay. Yeah. And again, just some different things in and around the parking lots. And I only bring that up because that's the one we were touching on a little bit earlier, but same flow, right? The next one here is about stairwells and elevators. Okay, so are you required to use stairwells and elevators? You may say yes, and we've got some different controls and things to consider there. Again, the workplace that we were just at the other day, you came in the front door, went to the elevator, right, to access to get up to the floor for this particular business, and the elevator walked right out into the reception area. That receptionist would never know who is coming through those elevator doors. That's literally right beside her desk, but they implemented a video surveillance so that there is a camera down in that main entry vestibule area to the waiting or to the area where you enter to the building. So that receptionist always sees who's coming in. And she had barriers too around her reception desk. But again, so they've gotten a little creative in a building that they don't own and what they needed to do in order to try and make sure that receptionist was aware of who's walking through those elevator doors when they enter the space. Okay. Yes, so that one is your stairwells and your elevators. So we talk about that. We get into also if staff washrooms are used by the public. Okay, staff washrooms pretty controlled when it's just staff using them. But when you got the public using them and we're multi-use, again, in a unit, lots of people using that same washroom. If yes, there may be some other controls to kind of consider and put in place there. Okay. Are workers required to perform tasks on outside grounds or outbuildings at the workplace? So again, this is kind of where we're considering where does our workplace span? And do we have sheds, garages, other shops, other storage areas that we need to go and access? Are we looking for suspicious activity? Are locks broken? Are people trying to maybe get inside, even if it's just to stay warm in some cases too, right? So looking for that, maybe it's a buddy system. If it's during maybe a high risk, maybe we're in a high risk area, maybe it's a certain time of day where lighting isn't great either. Do we bring out more than one person? But if you're a fairly secured facility, we're not suggesting that you always have to have two people, certainly to work on outside grounds or outbuildings. It's what's reasonable for the work that's being done in your type of workplace. And then we look at our unauthorized individuals able to access the workplace. So this one's a very unique one too. As we get into this, you think, oh yeah, we're secure. Like you come in the front and then we secure, maybe you just have a waiting area or a reception space where public can maybe come in or clients, whatever, but then we are locked from, any staffing area in, whether that be clinic area or manufacturing plant area, whatever that is. And maybe, but during the heat of the summer, we've seen this at many manufacturing facilities where they open and prop open doors, keep the big bay doors open, which makes sense because they need ventilation. But now you can't consider yourself a secured space, especially when you're open, your grounds are open to kind of whomever may be driving or walking by. So just consider that. Again, little things to kind of consider and always remember as you're going through the different situations. If we're doing this assessment in the winter when everything's closed and locked down, yeah, that makes sense. But do we think about, well, what happens in the summertime? Do things change? We also have a question around a hazard category around summoning assistance. And it is a legal requirement to make sure that individuals are able to summon assistance where violence could occur or is likely to occur. However, there's no prescription on how or what devices we use. So that's up to the company, okay? In this case, because it has that legal requirement to it to be able to summon assistance, regardless of whether you pick yes or no, you are going to get these list of controls and you do need to work through this piece. So note that if you do pick either yes or no, both responses will require controls to be considered and then have that risk assessed. Okay. When we look at interacting with the public, again, this one breaks down into a few different categories here. So this one has some subcategories. So do you interact with the public? That's our clients, our customers, anyone that we are kind of engaging with from that sense. And does your business provide services that may cause frustration or emotional distress? So do I have to deliver bad news sometimes? Right? Customer care, customer service, certainly, right? Looking at, we did one for a grain elevator and the guys bringing in the load of corn that were coming in, they all have to be probed to check and see if that corn is good quality and in proper condition. And if it's not, and it fails the test, they've got to deliver that news. And they're not always happy about that the load gets rejected and they have to now turn around and go bring that grain back. So different companies, different work. What is it? Is there news that we have to deliver that is not going to be, that people aren't always so happy with? Okay. And going to the next question, we ask whether alcohol is served in the workplace, because we know that with that aspect, people's behaviors change as a result of potentially being under the influence. And so there is a higher risk for violence for those in that case. If our next question then, although, is do you work with individuals who are under the influence of drugs or alcohol? So you don't necessarily have to be serving it in order to work with those individuals potentially. So you may say yes to that. Okay. The next question is, has there been previous incidents of violent or aggressive behavior from individuals? So have we had any other incidents of violence in the workplace? And then are workers required to enter a private dwelling? So are we doing home care or doing visits to people's homes for some whatever reason for the work that we do? We'll give you a set of list of controls and thoughts and questions in and around that. Okay. So now consider this, that when you are assessing the risk for this, it's not just assessing the risk for like the last question we did, it's assessing the risk for this whole category of interacting with the public. Okay, so, and we did that because we wanted to try and reduce, again, the amount of times you're having to do this risk assessment. So we're trying to kind of bundle that and categorize that for you a bit there as well. Okay. Then we have one here with objects of value. And again, I didn't mention this earlier, but each of these main hazard categories come with a description so that you know what it is we're kind of looking at here. So working with objects of value could be cash, expensive equipment, or maybe even sensitive information. It's all about, you know, it's in the eye of the beholder, right? So what items are attracting theft or robbery or targeted aggression. You may have something that's very low monetary value, but someone really wants to seek out. You may have things that are very high monetary value and people are like, I want nothing to do with that. So it's all about, again, your company, the work that you do, the sector you're in, and your vulnerability to that, if there's objects of value that you are protecting and people might be seeking out. If you don't think that that's happening at your workplace, you can say no and then move on to the next category. Working remotely and or alone. Again, I've been to a lot of workplaces where they're like, nope, we always have someone in the office. Our office is staffed. And I say, well, what about you have a small workplace, everybody goes for lunch, or, you know, but the one person stays back. Or, you know, I had to stay late to finish this particular work. I had to come in on the weekend. So it's those one-off things that we need to always consider when we're going through and doing this workplace violence risk assessment. So this one here also does have subcategories as well. So do workers work off-site or outside of a traditional workplace? So again, this is kind of getting into, we're not in that brick and mortar location, we're traveling for work. Okay, like we travel for work, so we will travel to the next customer site or we'll go do a presentation wherever that may be, right? So we do travel for work purposes, and we will give you, again, some controls or some suggested controls for when traveling. We also have some suggested controls for when workers are working from home. For this particular question, the ministry is very limited on kind of what they are suggesting for controls. The controls, what they're expecting, kind of have to relate to the telework that is being conducted. However, there are some best practices in here that as an employer, we could suggest that workers do just to keep themselves secure and safe in their own home. Okay. The next question is, do workers work in isolation at a workplace without close proximity to others? So again, we could be back at that brick and mortar main location, and we are very isolated in that workplace. We're in the back corner of the plant, or we're in an isolated office upstairs away from everybody. And if I were to call or yell out, no one's going to hear me. Okay, so there's questions in and around that as well. And again, assess your risk, and notes are available for that too. The last main category here is internal workplace. And this was something that we found to not necessarily always be captured in other tools that were out there. We largely assessed for the external threat, but we never really assessed for our own interactions between our own colleagues and our workers. So we have considered this now as well in this tool. This will automatically populate, because if you are an employer who needs to conduct a workplace violence risk assessment, that means you have employees. That means you have people who are going to need to interact with one another. So this automatically will show for you, and there are various different controls here when it comes to the control for that internal risk for workplace violence. And again, you'd assess the risk, add your notes, and move forward in that. We also, again, recognize that there may be very unique workplaces out there where we haven't thought of all the categories, all the hazard categories. You may go, we've got something else associated with violence, right? We're still keeping violence in mind. You can add your own workplace violence hazard, type that in, and add your controls for that as well. Okay. If you don't have anything further to add, you just click no, save, and next. So you've completed the assessment, but one thing we want to make sure you do is, before clicking submit, go back to those, maybe use your menu, go back to those categories and go, have I fully answered each of those pages? This is your one reminder before clicking submit to do that. And now if you feel good about the assessment, you can click now or submit now. And now you've got your two options here to download your report. So downloading your workplace violence risk assessment report, which is your summary of all of your answers that you just answered. And you can click to download your action plan, which is an Excel document. I'll show you an example of both of these. Okay, but once you download them, you want to save them. Okay, save them to your computer, and then print if you want, but just so that you've got copy and you know that those are saved somewhere for you. These reports will not automatically email you. We know, so just so you're aware of that. Okay, you have to download them and then save them. So I'm going to show you here the example of the summary report. Okay, so this is exactly what you'll get. Okay, your company information, you're going to get the static text that's part of every report. Again, just reminding you, you've identified these hazards based on the requirements under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. Make sure you share this with your committee or your workers. If you don't have a committee or a health and safety rep, it gives you options to click there for the glossary, again, the terms. Also clicking there brings you back to the assessment to reassess, the reminder that you need to reassess as often as necessary, and also takes you to our actual landing page. So there's some things here just to as reminders and to bring you to places that will be helpful now that you've completed your workplace violence risk assessment. We have our statement of limitations that are included with that. And now here's your summary of our findings. So depending on how you answered, in this case, I had some pre-populated reports. I identified 7 high, 3 medium, 3 low, 1 very low risk. So in looking at policy and program, you can see if I answered yes, there's no risk level tied to it. We've met the legal requirement. If I said no, that's identified as high risk because we're delinquent on a legal requirement, and this will also pull to the action plan, and I will show you that. Okay, if I had any notes, they're going to populate as well in that notes box underneath the particular section. You can see here physical environment. Okay, so again, your main hazard question is there, how you responded, what are the current controls that I listed. Okay, if I didn't have any current controls, there was no issue, it's going to gray that out. And then what was my risk level associated with that? Okay, so very clean, very to the point, very simple in that case as well. Okay, so the rest of the report will show very similarly in that case. Okay, so you can see here I had yes to some of those interacting, no to others. So not a problem, moving on. Same with the whole category of objects of value, not an issue, so no current controls needed, therefore no risk level. Okay, so that's your summary report, and then we have your action plan. Okay, so the action plan is where these are the future items that we selected, or if I typed in any future items, they will show in here as well. Okay, so for policy and program, you can see here, those were the ones that I identified weren't in place. And so we are needing to make sure we do that. So you can see, and we rate them from high to medium to low to very low. Okay, so they're prioritized for you in that sense. Those ones that you see as high risk, medium risk are the ones where you definitely want to pay your attention to and make sure we try and reduce that risk. The nice piece about this being an Excel version is that now you can modify it. You can go talk, maybe if you want to tweak some of these controls, go for it. Just keep record and document that, and that will be your final report. So that if the Ministry of Labor, Immigration Training and Skills Development ever were to come in, you can say, this is our summary report, these are our action plan, and you know what? We've got everything completed. This is who is responsible for it. This was the date we completed it on. We reassessed the risk and we were able to bring it from a high down to a medium. Okay. So, and any other notes that are tied to that. So that's the real benefit of this, is for that due diligence piece, documenting that, because we all know that's important when it comes to due diligence, is making sure we have that documentation to show and be able to do it that way. So those are the reports. We're going to pull back up the presentation here for you now. There's just a couple other things that we'll touch on for you in that regard. And we will be able to answer any final questions that any of you may have. Just as a reminder, when it comes to accessing your report and your action plan, I showed you the location on the last page to download them. But remember, on that first page that I showed you, when you log into your account and you have your assessments there, you can, when you log back into your account and you see that particular location, there's a spot here that says view reports. You can go back and access your reports that way as well. Okay. Just a quick poll question for you. Now that you've been able to kind of see the flow, understand how this works, we just kind of want to know, is this new workplace violence risk assessment tool something your workplace would use or find beneficial? Do you think that the ease of how we click base, how we, provide you with suggested controls, that we've provided you with a summary report and an action plan to help you kind of document what you need to? Oh, that's a good response. I appreciate that, guys. That's good. Chris, I know Christy, Megan, and I sitting on this presentation for you now have very full and warm hearts, knowing that a lot of you here feel that this would be beneficial for your workplace. So we are super happy about that. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Michael. Those are all great things to hear. So again, just to kind of wrap up, we are always here to help. And this was the other thing that I wanted to kind of make sure we really honed into you. Like, Christy, Megan, and I are so passionate about health and safety, and especially this topic, and especially because we helped to create this tool, and we've released the birdie. Like, the birdie's flying, it's out of the nest now, and it's doing well, which is nice. So, but please, if you're getting stuck, if you're stumbling, don't ever hesitate to reach out. And we can put our emails in the chat, and I know you're going to be getting an email later from our Safety Connection team about some resources and things like that you can use. The links for the tool are all going to be in there, but don't ever hesitate to reach out and go, I need help with this. Even if it's for us to show you or talk you or speak you through something, if that's free, like, unless you want us to come on site and literally do it for you and give you the reports and all that, like, that's fee. But if you just want us to kind of talk to us, run things by us, reach out anytime. Okay. These resources that you see here are all going to be in that email that comes out to you later as well. So, and kind of like pulling this full circle, right? At the beginning, I said, you've got the information you need to start this. But what we're doing now is just giving you the tool to help be able to pull you across the finish line. So now you have what it takes and the confidence in knowing to what questions do I need to ask. We've got things that are organized, an organized framework for you that kind of takes you logically through this process. So you've got the tools to complete, do the assessment, meet that compliance requirement, and knowing where you can turn to if you need support when challenges arise. Don't ever hesitate to reach out. Okay. That concludes the presentation on our new tool, but I definitely would love to open the floor to any further questions that you may have. Christy, Megan, and myself are here to help answer that. We've got 10 minutes left if there is anyone who has any questions. That's great. Yeah, Michael. Maybe just an applause. I appreciate that. Sometimes I do get I do the same thing. I get the raise hand and the applause mixed up. So I have definitely done that many, many times. So that is good. Okay. I'm not seeing too many questions come in, just a lot of good and appreciation for the tool, which is awesome. I love that. And again, reach out anytime if you have questions, but if nothing further, then I love for you guys to enjoy the rest of your day and take care. Yeah. Thanks so much, everyone.